Welcome back to another episode of the Heroes Veritas podcast. I'm your host, Tim Bass, and I am honored and grateful to be joined by Jack Donovan, author, speaker, masculinity reclaimer, extraordinaire. I mean, you've been in the space with masculinity, helping men step into their power for well over 10 years, if I remember correctly. I personally have been shaped by your words, your books, your podcast. So thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us here on Heroes Veritas.
No problem.
So Way of Men for me has been kind of like a cornerstone book. Anytime I get kind of lost on my way, I return to it. So one, thank you for that. It's something that I recommend every man should read. And as we kind of evolved as a society, one of the things that I really like recently that you've been talking about is kind of a return to creative spaces and artwork in order to influence culture. Can you speak to that a little bit about the importance of creative spaces for men?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just gave a speech about it at the Man Uncaged event that we had recently. And, in one sense, it's me returning to my roots, because that's actually what I went to school for. I'm an artist who writes, I think, more than anything. But if you really look at what's missing right now in masculine culture, the point I was making in my speech was that we don't have this. We don't have that's spam. No one ever calls me. I don't know if you could hear him. There's a phone ringing in the background, but I can't get it. So anyway, okay, sorry about that. I don't even have to put it on silent. No one calls me. But anyway. So I'm just going to turn that off. Sorry about that. You can cut that part out if you want. But.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Sorry about that.
No, not at all. Life happens, man.
No, Siri just told me it was okay. Thank you. I'm glad Siri wasn't offended. But anyway, as far as masculinity and aesthetics and art and the importance of that, the point I was making in my speech at the 21 convention was that, at the Man Uncaged event, was that one of the reasons why masculinity is, declining in many ways in American culture and in Western culture generally and all around the world. There are many reasons, but one of the main reasons is that really, if you look at it, masculine men stopped making culture. And what men do you know who you would respect as men, who are, strong and courageous and who care about those things deeply, who are, studying to be filmmakers or making art or making poetry or whatever? It's a very small number. And I think that we stopped making art in many ways, because if you look at it, art is actually our domain. There's this weird idea in American culture that only women make art or whatever. And, that's weird because men made all the art for the last 5,000 years, it's kind of our thing. It's actually, we are the creators, and we have defined what beauty is for the last 5,000, 10,000, whatever years. So, but I think that men backed away from that as women entered that space, and as their role in society became more tenuous. And you can see it everywhere in the conservative side of culture or whatever. You jump on Truth Social or whatever, one of these Gab or these sites fail because there's no culture there. There are people with ideas and there's political discourse, period. But there's nothing beautiful there. There's no vision of the future. There's nothing beautiful there. There's nothing those people aren't creating. Whereas all these people on the far left and whatever, Marxists and all this stuff, they're making beautiful art all the time. And it sucks, but that's the truth. I follow more art accounts and more graphic design accounts and whatever than I think most people do. And I half of these people won't even work with me because of me. I couldn't even hire them, but they're making good stuff. And the thing is that everybody talks about a culture war, but you win a culture war by making culture, not just by criticizing the other side. Like, they're making culture wrong. You have to make better culture. And we're really lacking that. And I think that, that's going to be a generational thing, because you don't just all of a sudden get a whole bunch of guys to start, oh, look, I'm an amazing painter, or, oh, look, I'm an amazing, I'm an amazing filmmaker now. That takes years of work and time and skill to develop. But I think it's so important. And I think that it's been left behind. Like, we ceded that territory to everyone else. And so it's like, well, why is, culture become so, effeminate, and why is there all these woke messages in everything that you watch? And well, that's because that's who you allowed to make culture. Those are the people who are making culture. If you were making culture, that wouldn't be in there, would it? So like, that's the problem. And so we have to find the solution is to make culture, but that takes time.
Yeah, I love the framing you put on it for two things. One, I recently had this conversation with somebody after watching Man in Cage. I was virtually watching it.
Oh, cool.
And so I caught quite a bit of it. I just had some other obligations, but I did catch that speech that you gave on Man in Cage in regards to culture and how we ceded that space. And a lot of times what I find in the masculine space, a lot of men like to create external dragons to slay, and they like to blame, right? They don't like taking responsibility and say like, oh, they took away my culture. No, you didn't care. So you just didn't step into that space. And so obviously where there's a gap, somebody's going to fill it. Something's going to fill it. And if you're not willing to step into that space and say, this is the culture I want to see, then obviously somebody else is going to fill that space. So I really love that. And the other part that you said that really struck a chord with me was it's our space, right? It's men's space. And Fire in the Dark, which is one of your more recent books, if not your most recent book.
It is, yeah.
It speaks to men and their role of going into the darkness and creating order out of chaos. And if you think about art in general, it's like you're taking something from nothing and you're creating order to some implication of your will on that space, right? You're saying, this is what I want to see happen. So
right.
When you look at it from that space, it's very thought-provoking for me and profound to like, I never thought of it like that. Like, I went to art school. So like there's alignment there, because like I went for video game design at the time. So art has always been something
that's super fun. It's all that 3D stuff.
Yeah,
I want to get a faster computer so I can do that stuff. But go on.
Yeah. So I got to mess with like polygons and coding and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And there were guys there that were just my absolute pinnacle at the time. Like, I remember this one guy, his name was Aaron. He was my roommate, and he goes, "You want to see something cool? Watch this." He types a couple phone numbers, calls a number, and they're like, "Hey, we need a 1600 polygon M16 created by tomorrow." He's like, "Well, that's triple my fee." As a new guy in art, I was like, "Wow, I could do that. That's cool." That was like height of amazing and excellence at the time. But like the reality is that we did cede that space, but it is our space. Like, if we want to create, right, which in Fire in the Dark you speak to this very heavily, and I like the way you articulate it, is you go out, you expand the border, you create order from chaos within that space, and you bring that fire back so that you can see more of that border, you can expand on that border. That is art, right? Like, if it's almost like the simulation of that creationism, of that chaos to order. So once you said that, it like kind of clicked of like, why don't we do more art? Why aren't we more involved in cultural pieces and developing, the mastery and excellence within creativity spaces?
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, a lot of the guys, the way of men is the foundation of what masculinity actually is, right? That role at the perimeter. And it's true that we've lost our ability to do that. And a lot of guys can't do like anything. And they need to rediscover that. And that's foundational. And I don't want to like say that we just need to make art and that's all it is. No, they need to learn how to
be masculine.
They need to punch in the face, and they need to do all that stuff too. But then bring that back and be informed by that. And what's really happened to America, I think in many ways, is that you have, because I have a lot of readers over time and so forth that are like, operators or whatever, and, served overseas in various ways. And a lot of those guys are so focused on the external, like about the perimeter, that they didn't realize that America was rotting inside. And it was rotting inside because the culture was just being destroyed, and the culture is the fire really in the center. That's that's what we're building. Because at a certain point, you look at all these guys and they're so worried about protecting something. Like, well, what are you protecting? Like, what's left? Like, what are you protecting? Your job is to create it and protect it, not just like protect a thing no matter what it is. Like it has to be guided as well. So I think that, yeah, it's an important part of the role. It's kind of like from the Fire in the Dark. It's kind of the Lord of the Earth role, really, because I mean that's what that is it's manipulating material reality. If you think of what a sculpture does, you're looking at a stone, and I look into that stone and I have a vision. Like I'm bringing my vision out of that stone. It's just a stone, but that is consciousness imposing itself on that stone and making it into something. And the same thing, it's like, oh, well, this is just a piece of fabric stretched over wood, and oh, boom, Rembrandt. Like you're like take some lead and some pigment and whatever, and then all of a sudden you have a beautiful oil painting. And that's the way in which we kind of become gods in a certain way, is we impose our consciousness on reality. And art is really a record of that in a certain way. Like a painting is a record of like, this is my vision of what reality could be. And and film is the same way. I mean, film is the modern theater. And again, it's like someone created a story, and the story really means something, and it touches, if it's good, it touches you in a human way. And then this director has imposed his vision of reality of what that looks like, and how those people behave. And that's us playing mini gods. That's what art is in many ways.
No, I agree 100% when you phrase it like that, because it's taking ephemeral and making it corporeal, right? Like you're literally conflating from two spaces and saying like, I'm going to take this divine place, figuratively. Like I can't explain where that thought come from psychologically and scientifically. We have no idea where thoughts come from.
Right.
And now I'm going to put it into this corporeal form so that the rest of the world can see what happens up here in this miraculous, for lack of a better term, thought process that nobody has any idea where it came from.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that's kind of scary about digital art. And, like I think it's the most masculine thing in the world that we want to piss on trees. Like we want to leave our mark everywhere. We're like dogs in that way. Like, and the thing is, like, you can make all the NFTs in the world, but do they disappear? I don't know. Like they just, I'm sure someone would have an answer for that, but that maybe their answer would be wrong. Because like even websites, people say that everything on the internet stays forever, and it kind of does. But I know, so I've written for so many websites that are no longer there, that just someone stopped paying the bill, and that's gone now. And so I mean, fortunately, I have most of those articles on file somewhere for me. But if I lost access to those files, I don't have those anymore. And that's kind of why it's cool to have actual paper books. It's like, well, they exist somewhere in Italy in someone's like library. There's a book with of words that I wrote, which is cool. And that's the cool thing with actually making like physical art, whether it's a print even of something you did digitally, something that exists in the world. So you're bringing something into existence.
I think that kind of identifies an underlying issue with security with human nature, right? Like if you look at internet, it is substantially, it is a temporary format, right? Because electricity goes down, there's no internet. Like if somebody stops paying the bill, there's no access to it. But it feels constant, it feels concrete and resolute, because if everything goes well and infrastructure stays in place and people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, you should theoretically have access to whatever you put out digitally, and things never go away off the internet. You can't delete it from the internet, right?
Right.
But there are underlying systems and infrastructure that have to happen, right? That we have to assume will maintain and persist in order for that instantation or that foundational resolution to exist, versus like a painting is like, as long as it's not destroyed by fire or something like that.
Right.
There's no underlying infrastructure that needs to take place in order to facilitate its existence.
Right. And the other thing is there's electricity, something like that, but there's also, there are many countries in the world right now where you just can't find certain things because the government's blocked them.
Yeah.
And we're on the really, we're at the edge of keeping that America is like the last place where you can still find anything. I mean, it's not the only place, but right now, but
but it's quickly shrinking.
Right.
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 You see what's happening in Canada. You see what's happening in the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, if you had said that 5 years ago, what's happening, nobody would have, I think you would have been considered a crazy man.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like 10 years ago, we would have actually imposed sanctions on Canada.
Yeah.
For what they're doing. I mean, they would treat them like we used to treat China. There's a humanitarian crisis going on there. There's so many people who I know some spicy Canadians who you just don't really see a lot from anymore because they can't. They'll just get deleted.
Yeah.
And it's very sad. And so I mean, you aren't guaranteed just because you put something on the internet that is going to be there forever, because someone might decide that it shouldn't be there anymore.
Yeah. 100%. Though it's funny because you one of the things you said is like to kind of conflate two of the ideas that you said there was, a lot of operators through your time and through your energy and what you've done. And you asked the question or posed the question, like, what are you protecting? Right. Like and I know a lot of operators, I just got off the phone with an operator that somebody introduced me to in just my inner dealings with people. And we had the same conversation, like, what are you protecting? And to bring it back to this conversation, it's the ideal, right? Like most of them have a moral imperative in their mind in some realm and some degree of like, I need to protect Constitution, I need to protect freedom of speech, I need that last bastion of hope that we aren't censored, we aren't controlled, we aren't tyrannically oppressed, right? Like that's kind of their idea of that protection. But to your point, if it's not maintained, if you're only doing it at the border, if you're only doing it at the outlier, then what's keeping it from happening internally? Like there's no protection internally, and there's nothing that keeps that from, like I like to say, implode like a flan in a cupboard. Like it doesn't keep it from going in if you don't create the stability and the structure within the realm of that empire, that kingdom, whatever that is.
Yeah, it's like just go out to the go to the sandbox and play for a while. We have some things that we want to ruin over here.
Yeah.
Like we go to Ukraine. Go somewhere else and do some like thing for these shady people who are just laundering money. And that's what's really sad about it. It's tricky about dealing with those guys because obviously a lot of them. There's some of them who've done some dirty things and done some bad things, and like they've seen how things work, and they have no scales on their eyes. And then there's other guys who are like just really still bought in, like you're still like in George W. Bush land, like you're still like bought into like what you were doing in Afghanistan, and we're gonna get the guy and whatever, and they have a deep emotional connection to that, and I think it's they also have like friends who have died like doing that, and so it's a really touchy thing. But like right now I really think that the biggest problem is in America, not like there is no foreign war that matters. Because there's nothing left to protect unless like if you walk away from certain ideas, if we become China, why would we have to fight them? Like who cares? Who cares? If America falls to China, but it's already like China, who would notice?
No,
exactly. So like this is what really matters here, and I think some guys are waking up to that, at this point, but other guys are just like focused on that thing over there for forever, and unfortunately that really isn't what matters now.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I always used to tell, like when I got out of the military, like I had a lot of guys that were very romanticizing of the bullshit, right? Like a lot of us in the military, we did like. You romanticize the camaraderie as if it's the whole, right? Like it's the entirety of your experience, and it really isn't. It's like 1% of your experience, and it's an amazing part of the experience, but it makes it difficult to compartmentalize what actually took place and what actually really fucking sucked.
Right.
And for a lot of guys, I used to tell them, like, you do realize that most politicians see loyalty and patriotism as a toy that they'll never tire of. Like, that you're a good old boy that they can push the patriot button and send you whatever place that they need you to do. And part of learning that discernment as a human, as a man, as a leader is like, am I easily manipulatable by not being by kind of like turning an ignorant blind eye to my own shortcomings, like my loyalty, my patriotism. To your point, there's some guys that are still in George W. Bush land. It's like, we're gonna go get the far enemy. We got to get the villain. It's like, they're here. They're here.
Yeah, the villains at like Harvard.
Yeah.
like you know, like the villains at like Stanford and Harvard. It's not
go
like
storm the universities. Like, I don't.
Yeah,
it's a different tactic that they may not understand or have.
Yeah, like I mean, I'm sure everybody knows where Bill Gates lives. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
you know, like
there's a lot of public information out there.
Yeah. I mean, one could find him if one were so inclined. I'm certainly not the right guy for that job, but there are guys who know how.
Yeah. I should say as a disclaimer before we get talking about
FBI.
We are not articulating violence here.
No.
This is not an encouragement call to arms. Like, this is
no.
Philosophical discussion in a figurative space. So
if one were so inclined.
If one were so inclined.
In a hypothetical alternate timeline.
Yeah. This was, Marvel's Madness universe, like that.
Right.
Do all that,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've had that conversation turn into like people thinking I'm soliciting for it. I'm like, no, but you shouldn't stray from having the conversation and the reality of the conversation from fear that it'll get perceived as intent, right? Which I see a lot today happening.
Yeah. I mean, there's perception and then there's what you actually said.
Yeah.
And obviously there's certain things I'm not going to say. Because I don't have the ability to do them, and I don't really have the influence to do them. But I'm just not going to say them because you only get to say certain things once. Like it's so you don't. And
you don't want to
like
get suicided.
People take things out of context and use them anyway. And you really, as an author, I can tell you right now, that I've written and said a lot of things that like. I could have a conversation with 3 different people and they mean 3 different things. So that's a struggle anyway. So no matter what you say, 5 different guys are going to hear it 5 different ways because it feeds into whatever they want to hear.
That's going to be through the lens.
I mean, I've had, obviously, like I had that dude who, went and shot like a handful of people recently, and he put me as a character in his book, and like he was a big fan of the way of men, and I talked to him I had him on a podcast once. And I mean, obviously then I had to get the call from fucking Antifa and the call from fucking the New York Times and all that. And fortunately he died during the whole thing, because if he would have gone to trial, that would have been messy. But just because it would have been brought up, but really I had nothing to do with any of that. I had nothing, I was like,
guilty by association.
Yeah. People love to do that because then they want to take somebody down. But and that's why I'm always bitching about anons. Like all these anonymous guys who are like big heroes, and like, well, when the New York Times calls you, let's see how that works out. There's a different game when you actually have to be responsible for your words and actions, and you can't just run your mouth and say crazy shit. It's go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I would agree with you that that's one of the biggest issues, in my opinion, with a lot of the social media side of the house. Is like, I get to put you had a post about it that I think I even tagged you in, but it was like men behind statues that whisper sweet nothings. They get to wear the mask without the accountability, without the risk, without the consequence, right? That like, who do I contact with the anons when I have an issue with what they said? Well, I don't fucking know. I don't know who they are. Versus you put your face out there, and you mentioned earlier, like perception versus what you actually said. You personally, with the length of time you've been doing this, are no stranger to being misrepresented and caricatured and dehumanized in an effort to take down somebody else or something else that took place.
Oh yeah. yeah. It's pretty much most of the press about me. And so you have to be responsible for that, and you have to make sure that you're saying what you actually mean and not just running your mouth emotionally. And that's the thing. We're in this space about masculinity, and if you're not being grounded and saying what you really mean and taking responsibility for it, like, why do you get to lecture people about masculinity at all? Mm-hmm. I'm not perfect. I'm not like the perfect representative. I mean, when I started writing, The Way of Men, there weren't a lot of guys talking about masculinity, and a lot of them were anonymous. And I'm certainly not the best one that you could ever pick. I mean, like now we have all these operators and all this stuff that are better at certain things than I will ever be. But I mean, you know what you're getting. I am what I am for whatever my faults and or what skills and faults and all that. I am what I am, and you can see that. And the other people who can just pretend to be anything, but then they're not taking responsibility for their actions. Like they're not taking any risks, so it shows a huge lack of courage. To some anyone, literally anyone on the internet who's anonymous compared to a dude like Ian Smith, there is no comparison. They're like that. Those people are not even like the same creature at this point. I mean, that's yeah. I mean, like the dude who's getting fined $30,000 a day and like busting his ass. Like no matter what happens, and he's running for Congress now. He just impresses the shit out of me. And that's what I want to see more of. I don't want to see more of like dudes like, I have a funny screen name and I'm being clever. Like we need actual men to stand up and do something and actually speak out instead of what we were trying to say we're not doing. Stand up and do something. But
there is a dichotomy there, right? Like we're not saying call to arms of violence, but there needs to be a call to arms of taking the risk and putting your face out there and having accountability to what you said. To your point, Ian Smith impresses the shit out of me. Because like you said, there's not much else you can do in the regard of like getting fined $30,000 a day for 2 straight years and still coming out of that and going, I'm going to go run for Congress now. Like you can't get more impressive than that. I mean, to your point, I think a lot of people conflate social media and Instagram with the arena, and it drives me up a wall.
Right.
And to see somebody like yourself, who's, I would say, in the arena, because you're in the speaking circuit, you put your face out there, you put your name out there, you're constantly getting called by like New York Times, for instance, like you mentioned. Ian Smith is even
I have a border profile. I got stopped at the border by immigration last time I went. When I went to Mexico, I got stopped by the U.S. when I came back.
Yeah,
we want to ask you some questions.
Yeah, you get flagged, right? Like,
yeah, I have a little bit of a flag. I mean, it wasn't a big one. It wasn't a big deal, but like, I'm on a list.
Yeah.
And that's, you get on a list. This is not a game, and so, a lot of people, I guess it's great if you can just say whatever you want and then you don't have any risks in your real life. But, that, how can you speak about courage when you do this? Yeah. We need more people to stand up. And the thing is, now there's more and more guys doing that than ever. I mean, like I said, there weren't a lot, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But now, I mean, you have, like Ryan Mickler, like, dude could be making $1 million doing anything.
Yeah.
And he's doing this. Same as John Lavelle. John Lavelle doesn't have to do that part of it. He could just teach firearms. You don't have to get involved in the now it's like interesting because it's like with the Man on Cage event, and we all got together before that in Cancun earlier. When I went to Mexico.
When I got red flagged.
Yeah, when I got red flagged on the way back. When we, those guys are a bunch of ballers. They're a bunch of millionaires who really have something to lose, and who have a lot to offer. And that's a different level of the game than anything that's been at up until this point. And so we have a lot of really guys with more skin in the game who and that's what you really need if you're going to make changes in the world. You can't rely on dudes like, we're going to argue about things on the internet, because that's not getting it done. That's level 1, but like it's not level 15 where we want to be. It's just the start. So now you're seeing more and more of that. I think more and more of those guys will get actual blowback eventually because they'll become a threat.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, there is strength in numbers, and the more guys who actually put their face on something and stand for something, the better off we are, and I say that like personally speaking, I'm like, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm a little tired. But I actually am probably going to shift gears and start making a lot more art, because I feel like that's my job, because I said that needs to get done, and I actually have that skill, and I have
always been very aesthetically minded.
That's
one of the things that really has always impressed me about everything you come to the table with is, like, one, the integrity behind, like, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, but also like it's something that I strive to develop and build into my systems, is like that aesthetics, because it's part of that cultural piece. Is like, I want you to have an attachment and a thumbprint to it, similar to like Jack Donovan has a thumbprint to your books, to your podcast, to your speaking, and like I've always admired that about you. And so you getting, it makes sense you're an artist, and like you getting back into the art of things. I've seen you over the last couple of years as I followed you. You put out things that you've drawn or you've worked on or whatever. Um, the father like art projects that you, like
Mhm.
grants that you gave out, right, to just
Yeah.
facilitate that. I loved all of those. I love the music, I love the, the blacksmithing, like all of that stuff
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
it was like you said, taking it into that visceral corporeal space where you're really seeing it start to pick up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I want to do more of that. And I just realized that, like I was kind of like, I was kind of whatever, kicking the ball down the field or whatever by just commissioning people, because I'm like, I didn't want to do the hard work of actually doing it. Like I'll just throw some money at this and like try and make it happen. But which is not always wrong, but I can do the other thing. And maybe if I want to see what I want to see, then I have to do it. Or be involved in it in some way. But one of the points I made at that speech that you saw, because most people, have probably didn't see it. Um,
Which is sad, because the like you said, the people that were on stage were powerhouses, yourself included.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that was kind of the deal. It's like, it's like everything else I've done has gone right to YouTube. So like, everybody can see it, but that was kind of a closed deal. And, there are going to be more events like that in the future, but, I'm sure there'll be clips and so forth. But one of the points I was making in it was that to bring something beautiful in the world, you don't have to be an artist. Cause not everyone has that talent, like, or that particular drive to do it. Some people are just really good at figuring things out. Like I always say, like, like the world needs accountants. Like I need an accountant. I'm waiting for an accountant to do my taxes right now. Like, cause I can't do it. Or well, so we need those guys. We don't need everyone to quit their jobs to become artists or life coaches or whatever, because that's what a lot of people, everyone wants to do that now. But you can actually, if you make money doing something else, you can bring beautiful things into existence by, going and finding those artists and taking interest in that. And for the price of your new rims or whatever, like I put out $500 grants to make those songs. And, I'm sure those guys, did more than $500 of work, but they wanted to do that work anyway. And so like they got a $500 bonus. So like it was like worth doing all of a sudden. And so, I just helped them do what they wanted to do already. And, the $500 is dick, it's nothing, like, and, like when I did that meditation song, like for the Potato Project, it that I spent like $1,500 on, because I wanted the rights to it to sell. So I went to my buddy Todd, and he said, "Hey, can you do this? And here's how much I could afford to pay for it." And he did a great job. And that's okay. So it's $1,500, and I came up with whatever 20-minute soundtrack to the medications. That's what I want to meditate to forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people think that they can do that. They spend money on like a couch, like upgrading their couch or whatever, but they could actually like, well, this thing that I wish existed, I can actually just pay someone to create it. And like I think that people just need to recognize that that's a possibility.
No, what I think you said something that really resonated with me a moment ago, which is something that strikes a chord with me, because I coach men, I help men step into self-respect and confidence, because that's an area that I'm very good at. I'm very good at walking into a room of people and being very deliberate about who I am. Like I have no fears or qualms about it. I don't care what level they're at. So I help people with that.
Mhm.
And as soon as I started doing that, I realized how many life coaches exist in the world, right? Like how many people were just like, well, I'm 26 now, so I'm going to quit my job and become a life coach.
Right.
And social media has this odd space. It's kind of contemptuous for me. Like I use it as a megaphone to like talk and help with people, but when you consume it is when it becomes very contemptuous for me, because it's like everybody's a coach and everybody has the same premise of like, I I need to quit my job and find my passion and my purpose. And it's like you can do both. Like you can pay your bills, handle your responsibilities, master your skill set that you want, purpose or whatever over here. But social media is saying, no, 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 you can't do that. You have to like you said, everybody needs accountants in the world. Like, is it being an accountant going to maybe fulfill you? Some people, maybe, who knows? But that doesn't
Yeah.
mean you have to stop doing that to go and build beautiful things or become somebody of import or influence the world. Like I still have a day job, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
building a company. We're incorporating with Heroes Veritas. I brought on a CFO, a VP, and I straight up told him, I was like, listen, this is a passion project for me. I want to help make an impact on the universe, but I'm not quitting my job because we haven't fulfilled any level of support system here.
Right.
And to your point, I don't think people think that you're allowed to do that because some coach told them to just be like, follow your passions and quit everything you love. It just doesn't make
Yeah.
any reasonable.
Not everyone's set up to be an entrepreneur. It's hard. I mean, I've been self-employed for a good number of years now, probably 6 or 7. And but like sometimes I just want someone to tell me what to do. Like I need a manager or somebody who could like be like, Jack, that was a really good idea. Why don't you build on that? Okay, well, that's what I'm doing today. Instead of like, what
Why
am
do
I
you think
doing
I got
today?
it? Why do you think I got a VP?
Yeah. Yeah,
Like I
no, it's
legitimately
great.
like I know my strengths and weaknesses, and like I'm a
Yeah.
visionary. I like to build big stuff, but when it comes down to the minute details and the like organizing, like prioritizing what needs to happen in that moment or in that day, I may be off dicking around with like some big dream in the future of 10 years from now, like this is gonna be amazing and everybody's gonna love it. But meanwhile, he's like, I need you to record an episode, bro.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let me go do that real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, 100%. Like, I feel that. And so, like, not everyone can do that by themselves. And I think that that's what a lot of the dream is, for certain people. And there's certain people who will get up and do that every day. But, okay, well, I make a living off my books. And I'm like, the rest of it is all like very, like what actually brings me money. I don't know. Today, my job, well, it's this. I mean, this is my job. And then also it was I want to put out my own version of Nietzsche's Thus Spake Zarathustra. So I'm basically putting that into InDesign myself, like chapter by chapter, and reading it chapter by chapter as I put it in, because I want to write an introduction to it. And so I've been doing weird research on that and the concept of Zoroaster and whatever for the past like few
on more
weeks.
lists.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like, like, okay,
Yeah.
like that's there's nothing that's not tangible. It matters, but it's not like tangible. And I could probably have someone being like, could you get that part of it done tomorrow? I'd be like, oh yeah, I actually could do that. Yeah. But I'll draw that shit out for a month.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How are you coming along on your Gilgamesh project?
Yeah. Oh, the Gilgamesh. Which part of it?
You said you wanted to write a book on it, but you wanted to commit to the rites and the rituals and really get an understanding of how they work. So you like climbed up a mountain at one point and.
Oh no, I wasn't. No, I'm not going to write about a book about Gilgamesh. I am. I did the couple rituals from it, and I wanted to write some more about that. I actually have the video. I mean, that's another thing. I have the video of that for widescreen version. I need to do a YouTube version of that where I talk a little bit more about it and what I was doing, because I want to do a little bit more stuff like that. But that's a project that's a big me sitting in here for a day or like recording take after take about whatever and then editing it into a video and whatever, and again to make no money, but it's just something that I wanted to do that I thought was cool. But yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff like that I could do or whatever. And then but yeah, to get to our practical point for real people and not just me figuring out what I'm gonna do with my life. Yeah, everybody doesn't need to quit their job. Everybody doesn't need to become a life coach. Everybody, I mean, like you have to be honest with yourself. Like, what are your strengths? So, like, I'm not a life coach for a reason. I mean, I guess I probably could become one pretty easily if I decided I could sell people. But I was like, it's too weird. I don't understand how to tell some guy how to like balance his checkbook and stop fighting with his wife. Like that's not. I don't know how to deal with real life for regular guys. Like what I do is weird, so I don't do that. And I think there are a lot of people who just see the dollar signs. They're like, well, he's making a ton of money doing this, and so I should do that. And that's not always the right play. Like you need to do what you're actually good at and what you actually want to do. Because a lot of people, and it was the same thing a few years ago. Everybody wanted to start a t-shirt company. Well, t-shirts actually aren't that profitable. I mean, they do okay if you have them printed out yourself and you're not doing print on demand like I do. But you know, everybody's like, I'm going to start a t-shirt company and I'm going to have a brand. And they really just wanted to put a slogan on a t-shirt. And that was literally all that was their whole plan for that. I'm going to put a brand name on a shirt. And then
I did that.
Then people are going to buy it. Yeah.
I did that. I did that.
Right.
I made my own brand. Mine failed because I tried to do what I'm doing with Heroes with t-shirts,
Yeah.
and everybody's like, dude, it's a t-shirt. I'm like, yeah, but I want to change the universe. So like, it's fucking t-shirt, bro. Calm down.
Yeah. Well, and you can create a narrative and like do this whole thing around a clothing brand. And that's like an option that I have on the table. I mean, you somebody like, I don't know if I always forget his name, but his brand is HV123, like hate is what it spells, but like he's actually super positive. he used to be compete in the Highland Games. I think his first name is Matt, and he used to compete in the Highland Games. And he's a really popular like exercise brand, named HV123, and he does great. And he's but does lifestyle stuff. He it's all very positive. It's all very philosophical, and his approach to things and whatever. And he just seems like a really nice guy. And I know some people who know him, and it just comes across really well for him. And it's not fake, and it's not stupid, and it's not whatever. So you can do that, but like you have to be a certain kind of guy and have a certain kind of idea for it. And but like I said, everybody just wanted to put something on a t-shirt and think that was a company, and that's what they were going to do. And it just isn't enough for it's not going to be self-sustaining. You really have to be a business person. The one guy who I know who's done really, really well with it is Andy from Norse Fitness. And I remember when Andy had one t-shirt and I made the exact same criticism to friends of ours at the time. He just had a t-shirt that said Norse Fitness. And I was like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like, I was like, you just put words on a shirt in a font. Like, what the fuck is that? Because that was when I was doing clothes and I was spending a lot of time on them and on the design of them. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And then over time, he actually hit me up a bunch of times, like for artist suggestions and whatever. And then he started putting out really good quality stuff. And he started hiring really good artists, and they were making really great designs, and he started a really cool culture. And then he opened his own gym that was funded by that. Now he has, I think, 2 locations of his own gym where he has this whole culture around what he does. And he's been really impressive, but that's because he's a really good businessman. And that's so you have to be that. You have to be that guy to do that thing. And you can't just be like, I'm going to make a t-shirt or like, I'm going to become a life coach. You have to really think really hard about what you really want to do. And if you don't, maybe you should keep your day job.
Yeah. 100%.
You're not ready.
I think a lot of the social media adds to it too, of like those coaches of the coaches of like, become a life coach and 6 figures a month and do it in 90 days. And it's like, you're not going to get there in 90 days, bro. Like the amount of stuff you have to develop, the lessons you have to learn to be able to actually cultivate that level of success is not going to happen in 90 days. The people that you see that can do that, they've usually already cultivated a brand. They've already put years of time and experience into being a business person, a speaker. They've created an audience already, and then they decide to do those things. And then in 90 days, they make all this money. There's time that went into that. It's not like an instantaneous, I'm going to go make a t-shirt, I'm going to go be a coach, and it's going to be like instant.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely formulas, but like there are too many guys trying to use the formula, and so it's starting to actually look sociopathic.
Yeah.
I'm seeing there's a couple guys. I mean, there's one in particular. I'm obviously not going to. I don't talk shit about people, so I'm not going to mention his name. But there's one guy in particular who I know and have met, and I've watched him turn in the past like 6 months, just watching what he puts out, and it's like, when did you become Tony Robbins? Because everybody tries to be Tony Robbins now, and it just. Like your daily affirmations of like, got to make $10,000 a month. Got to make, if you do this, then you can't do it. If you can't do that, like all these weird platitudes that seem really formulaic. Mm-hmm. And, like this is what you have to do to be successful. And a lot of it is self-talk, but a lot of them is them just repeating the shit that they read.
Yeah.
And so it's very, I feel like there's going to be a bubble in that space. Like there are bubbles in everything.
Mhm.
And there's going to be a bubble of like, okay, we have enough. We're good on life coaches and motivational speakers now. Like
Yeah.
we're maxed out. Like
Yeah,
we don't need any more
you
of
can
them.
only have so much in an industry. I mean, that's just the
Yeah.
reality. And I
Yeah.
had that
Yeah.
I had a conversation similar to that with he's writing a book for his sons, and that's what
Mhm.
got him into this kind of like masculinity space.
Right.
Ryan King,
Okay.
good
Yeah.
guy.
Mhm.
I love his content. And one of the things he said is he's like, listen, I remain ignorant. He's like, I don't go watch other profiles. I don't want to go and consume a lot of content because I don't want to be derivative.
Yeah.
And I don't want to end up regurgitating something that I saw, and then I start blending the line of like what's me versus what's actually something I'm regurgitating. And I was like, that's a very valid point. And I think a lot of people don't have that self-auditing structure to be like, listen, like I need to actually remain a little ignorant so that I can maintain my authenticity.
Well, yeah, and also just you just want to make sure you're not copying people directly. I mean, I have a lot of people. I'm like, especially. I mean, I've been around for a minute. I'm like, well, that was an interesting way to rephrase exactly what I said. When
I was
read
definitely
people's
guilty of
posts,
that when
I'm
I
like,
started out.
I mean, lots of people do that. I mean, that's the gift you give the world, right? You give people an idea and then they make it their own. So you can't get too sensitive about that. But sometimes it's just like, come on, man, you changed one word.
Yeah.
You know, like
I realized
that's a
and I started
citation,
giving
not
all
a
the credit. I
thought.
was like, I get that from Jack. I get that from
Yeah,
Ryan. I
yeah.
get
Well,
like I
that's
started tracking
the
that out.
honorable way to do it. That's what you're
Yeah.
supposed to do. But so there's that out there. But no, I've done that too. As far as I have not read a lot of Jordan Peterson at all. I keep Jordan Peterson. I actually went and saw him speak recently because someone gave me a free ticket, and so I went and saw him speak, and I've skimmed a couple things that he's done and watched a couple of videos over the years, but it was because I came out with The Way of Men before he got really big, and then I went through this period where everybody was like, "Oh my God, have you read Jordan Peterson?" And I was like, "No, I have not." Yeah, like no, I
Like
didn't.
the Game
No,
of
I actually
Thrones thing where it's like, no, I haven't watched Game of Thrones and I won't.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a few things I've done with my life. They're like, once you get asked enough times about it, I'm like, no, and I never will. But and that one of the things was because he became so popular, I didn't want to ever wonder if I was saying something derivative.
Yeah.
And I don't
I've
think
read
that I
both. I've
necessarily
read
would.
both your works implicitly, and you guys are so far polar in your messaging. It's like I couldn't fathom anyone ever thinking Jack Donovan's derivative of Jordan Peterson or vice versa.
I mean, I guess I get there's a
Both
little
amazing in your guys' own right, but very, very different.
Oh yeah, we're very different, but then it's like we end up talking about a lot of the same things. I mean, I'm like talking about order and chaos all the time, and he's talking about order and chaos all the time. And I actually didn't even know that he was talking about order and chaos until I kind of saw it come up in a graphic or something. I'm like, well, I've been writing about that for 6 months, so whatever. Like it's but people that's a really weird thing that's happened. I didn't realize it until recently, but I had this discussion. There's this academic that wrote some stuff about my work, and he then I went through a Google Scholar rabbit hole reading what all the academics write about me. And one of the weirdest things in academia is that they can't imagine the possibility that you didn't get your narrative from somebody. You had to have read that somewhere, and you're repeating it. You can't actually have an original thought.
Well, because
or you can't come to a similar conclusion on your own. You had to have gotten that from somewhere. And they have a very specific place where they want me to get ideas from, because they want to put me in a certain rabbit hole.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I could get the same idea from the fucking Iliad. Like there's, most of the things that I'm saying are consistent with just how men have thought for the past like 5,000 years. Like there are a lot of things that I'm saying, I would have said in ancient Rome, and they would have been like, well, yeah. I mean, it wouldn't have been like earth-shatteringly weird. In fact, they would have just looked at me like I was idiot. Like, why did you even have to say that? Everyone knows that. So it's weird that, but everybody obviously wants to put me in like, Germany in the 1930s. But like clearly everything came from Julius Evola or something, but really I didn't, like it's just, sorry, that's just how the world has always worked, and I just called it out. I'm not, like influenced by like this one period more than necessarily any other.
But I think that's in itself a byproduct of how we educate today.
Yeah.
Right. Like you are educated by experience. So the way that you write, the way that you speak to things, it's experiential, right? And you may go back
Right.
and look at like thematic consistencies, but it's an experiential repose, right? Like you're literally saying, I experienced it like this. This is why I'm going to articulate my experience into the world, versus the way academics write, and generally speaking, how we learn as a society in Western culture today is sit down, be quiet, learn what I tell you to do, and regurgitate. And every thought that you have is going to be spoon fed to you. And if you think outside of that box, we're going to chastise you and dehumanize you because you're not allowed to do that. So you had to have gotten it from somewhere, which is sad, because that's, most humans learn best by caught, not taught, experiential learning, not sitting in a classroom.
That's how you actually know things, like that's how you know fire is hot, because you touch fire like, oh shit, like that, like that's hot, rather than like, I've been told all my life that fire is hot, therefore fire is hot. I mean, that's not knowing. That's not really knowing.
It'd be really creepy if somebody said that to you.
Yeah. Like,
very, like,
I never have to know that fire is hot, and that's the stupidest example, but it's just everybody can relate to it, like, and having done a bunch of jobs and so forth, and seeing the way a bunch of people behave is where a lot of my ideas came from. Like same stupid ideas when I went to art school that everybody else in our art school had, and then I went out in the real world and worked for a while instead of staying around those people. If I would have stood around those people in New York for the rest of my life, I'd probably be doing what they're doing.
The good news is you would have been able to access their talents more than you can now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I've always been ornery, so I probably would have done something wrong anyway. But but I went out and had to deal with real life for a while, and for a lot of years, and saw and did a lot of different things, and saw how people behave and what they really mean, and that influenced what I know about things, a lot more than necessarily books. Books is like where I go for like reference material and like how to put this in a historical context or whatever. But I mean, a lot of it is just, like dealing with people and like seeing how they actually behave versus what they say versus what they do, which is a huge disconnect. I mean, work in corporate America for a while and you'll see some bullshit. Some people bullshitting each other all day long, every day.
Yeah, and 95% of the time it's a circle jerk.
Yeah.
Ego stroking and making sure that they feel nice.
Yeah, and it's a very feminine environment, really, at this point. Whereas I think, like 100 years ago, that would have been very different. It'd be like, get your shit together, Bob. It'd be, now to be like, Bob, is there something wrong at home? But
that was a hard lesson when I first entered corporate environment.
Sure.
I went right out of the Marine Corps. Like I got out of like.
Oh yeah, that sounds bad. Yeah.
I literally went and I'll never forget I literally walk into my boss's office and he's like, hey, did you make so and so cry? And I was like, not that I'm aware of. And then he says, they said that you threatened to kill them. And I started laughing. I started laughing. I didn't know how else to respond. And he's sitting there like this and he's staring at me just dead serious. He's like, did you say that you were going to kill them? And I was like, it's possible? Like,
I don't know.
Like, and then like he started explaining the situation, and I was joking with a buddy, and he was talking shit, and I was like, dude, I'll slap the shit out of you. And these guys got scared that I was going to slap an individual independent of them altogether. And they went to my boss and he said he's going to kill us. And I was like, what the? And I almost got fired over that. And if it wasn't for my buddy coming in and going, no, this is what really happened, I would have got fired. It was super weird. I'll never forget it.
Yeah. And I mean, I got the beginning of that because I probably haven't worked a job like that since, like the mid 2000s. So I got the beginning of that, but it's like a lot worse now from everything that I've heard. and it's just amazing that people like think that way and have to deal with that. It's like, why is there a problem with masculinity in our society? Well, like, because
Grown man crying, literally.
yeah, it's just absurd to me. Like, even, I mean, I remember, I mean, just because I, I'm not good in that kind of environment. Like, I get super fucking tribal. Like, I mean, even when I was working with the girls in the site, yeah, I was at some financial services company with the, and the other people who were processing paperwork, and I was kind of like the lead person in charge of processing paperwork, and like those bitches in that other department, what the fuck did they say? Like, you say like I'm going to send an email to someone, like it's just funny. It's a really weird tribal thing, even in those kind of environments. But but yeah, like seeing that versus like watching like, blue collar guys work, and seeing all the bullshit that they have to go through, and all the things that's, like that the people in the white collar world want these people to go through because they don't have to deal with them.
From it.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. So I mean, a lot of my perspectives come from like doing all these different things. Which is, like I said, how you actually know things. Like, I know to buy insurance because of my office got broken into and I lost $15,000 worth of equipment. So I know I need better insurance. Post. Yeah, like I guess I need better insurance in the future. I guess I learned that lesson. I really know it. I didn't just hear about it. I know it.
I remember the sting of walking back to the broken glass.
Yeah. I know it wasn't that was bad. But that at that point you're thinking, because I did have insurance.
Right.
And so like at that point you're thinking like, maybe I get to buy all new stuff, like, and then I called them and they were like, no, you only have liability. You get nothing. And I was like, that hurt. that was the day, like, was like, no, what? So but that's like I said, I actually know that, that's a lesson I've learned, So, and there's a lot of things like that you just don't know until you do them.
Yeah, no matter how many times somebody tells you, you'll never take it into guidance until you've experienced it. And it was like, oh, I was like me with my dad. My dad told me all kinds of shit when I was growing up. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I was like, oh, yeah, okay, now I get it.
Oh yeah, that's I guess the charm of being a dad. At a certain point, you were like, well, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
because I know. Because I've done that, and that, like, well, you don't want to go through that bullshit, and that's kind of the role that older men have to a certain extent. Like, that's probably not going to work out the way you think it is, and sometimes you surprise them and you do pull the shit off that you're trying to do, but then a lot of times being an older dude is just being like, that's not gonna go the way you think it is. That's gonna bite you in the
quality
ass.
Of like what you said is like, you got to let them touch fire sometimes. Like, being the older guy of like, let's see how this plays out.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, you absolutely do. You have to be like, and sometimes you're wrong. I remember I had a younger friend years and years ago who was going to quit their job and become an author, and I was like, maybe you should keep your security job at Ross. Like, you're like, maybe you should. You got bills to pay. Maybe you should not do that. And sure enough, worked out for him. So some people surprise you, but you gotta. What the bad things happen. I think once you've had some things happen.
Yeah, that was always my statement to people, because they're like, what, like, dude, I've lived more life in 33 years than a lot of people in their entire life. Like, I've gone through ups and downs and all the things, because me personally, I don't like running from an opportunity to say yes to something, which is good and bad, because it's led me into some really fucked up situations. But now I have the ability to kind of like discern things similarly at a younger age than a lot of people that may have more than likely experienced like a bubble wrap life, where it's just kind of like everything's taken care of them and they don't really experience much. They're just kind of like, I go to school, I come home, I get a job, I get married, I do the thing. I check the boxes, right?
Here's the formula, like you perform the formula, and
yeah. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I really do appreciate everything you brought to this podcast. I've enjoyed this conversation, and you seem very much like a person that I would talk to for hours on end and have no shortage of things to discuss. Before I let you go, are there any upcoming projects that you'd like to let anybody know about? Maybe something they can support you on or just follow you at?
Well, I mean, I'm new to Twitter. I'm like a Twitter, like I guess I'm not a virgin, but like I'm new. So like if you're on Twitter, I my name was taken, so I had to be put there, which is the P2 what yeah, P yeah, PH2T3R. So that's how you spell it in whatever Proto-Indo-European. Uh, but so I use that for a lot of things, and that's so but you can probably just find Jack Donovan on Twitter. So that's my new thing. That's my new project right now. Is kind of building that because I have all my friends that have been on there for like 10 years, and they'll have like 100,000 followers, and I have like 1,000. So like that's my thing that I'm trying to build my way up on because I got in right when Elon said he was going to buy it. I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll do this now that I've been making fun of it for 10 years. And, and also in reality, in 2018, I would have been kicked the hell off to Twitter. No, no problem. I would have been gone early, but yeah, so that's probably for the best. But anyway, so I'm working on Twitter right now. Obviously my Instagram is at start the world. My website is jack-donovan.com. I have a newsletter that you can get through any of those sources by following links. And as far as new projects go, I mean, obviously we have Chess Magazine, which is, we try to put out articles, as often as we can. It's a labor of love. I don't make a lot of money off of it. I don't make any money off of it. So we're doing it as I can. But beyond that, there is a 10th anniversary edition of The Way of Men, because it has been around for 10 years. So I worked on that last year. That I wrote a new afterword for it. And a lot of people gift that book to their friends, or they give it to their kids, which is cool. And or they want like a reference copy of it instead of this little paperback thing. So I put it out in hardcover, so you can get it from hardcover.
Yeah, it sold
via
out in like 4 seconds from the time you released it.
Well, yeah, the you can buy it on Amazon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
you
was on
can
your
buy the
website. I
hardcover
was
on
like,
Amazon.
and it's gone. I was like, all
Yeah,
right, never mind then.
anyone can buy it on Amazon. I'm gonna read. I have another 20 or 30 books sitting here. Well, no, actually, like more like 40 to 50 sitting here because I ordered 100 because they're expensive because they're hardcover. So I'm like, I only want to throw down like $2.5 grand right now, whatever, to get these books, and then I'll buy more later. But I'm not going to throw down like 10 grand and just have them sit here. So I have limited copies, and I also know that I only want to sign so many at a given time. But so those are the signed copies that I'm putting them out through my newsletter and through Instagram when I put a few up for sale. But anyone can order the hardcover through Amazon right now. It takes a little longer to ship it than it normally does for other books, but Amazon will send that out. So anyone can get the 10th anniversary hardcover if you want a better one for your library or your shelf. Or to give to someone as a gift, makes a better gift than the paperback one. So that's out right now. And then beyond that, I'm moving to Arizona, I think, in the next month and a half. And like I said, I want to focus more on making art and doing photography and things like that. So I'm going to kind of shift gears and put out more content like that. So it's not all going to be, me talking about ideas and masculinity, because I feel like I've said most of what I have to say about that. And I really want to build on the ideas from Fire in the Dark. I mean, there's so many.
Oh, I lost you. Right when you started talking about something good. Sorry about this, folks. Give it a second. Hopefully we can get him back. Whoop, it's gone altogether. Welcome back.
All right. So where did you lose me? It was weird.
Arizona.
I Arizona. Okay, because I was like, we're almost done, but I figured I'd hit you back. What I got out of it was, um, I kept talking and talking and talking, and then I heard you talking back, and I was like, it doesn't make any sense what he's saying. And it was like the end of your audio, like trailing out as you were like getting sucked away. So I'm like, why is he interrupting me? Like, what?
What an asshole.
I think it was you realizing that it was frozen and it was like the video was gone, but the audio was still there or something like that. Cause you're like, I think you were said something like right when he was talking about something good or something like that. It was like
yeah,
a weird thing.
That was the last thing I said was right when he was saying something
good. But anyway, like, so in a few months here, I'm going to move to Arizona, and I'm really looking forward to just focusing more on, like we were talking about, art, because there's so many ideas from the book The Fire in the Dark. When I was younger and I was making art, I didn't know what to make art about. I was just doing what all the other kids in art school were doing, trying to do something shocking or like whatever on a theme, like get attention. And now it's like I have all this stuff that I actually care about, that I could envision and put out there into the world. And so I'll be shifting gears, I think, over the next few years into producing more art and maybe doing prints and influencing culture maybe in that way. And probably, I'm sure I was reading Nietzsche today, and so whenever I read Nietzsche, I want to start writing, because that guy strums my pain with his fingers. I'm like, me too. Whenever I read Nietzsche, it's a weird thing. It's like we're bros. I'm like, I've totally had that exact same feeling. But so I mean, I'll probably do more writing as well, but I'm looking forward to chilling out in Arizona and making some art and seeing what I can produce in that direction. So yeah,
that's super exciting. I'm super excited to see that come out and come to fruition, because you've already released different things that I've seen. And Fire in the Dark for me specifically was super profound and empowering. Just the theme behind it and the way that you articulated was very creative in an artistic space. Like I could visualize kind of like the Sky Father, the Lord of Earth. Like I was like formulating my own kind of visual representation just by listening. And because I read it, I read it twice because I was just so enamored by the words.
Awesome.
I'm not trying to kiss your ass, but like
no,
just enamored by the words. And then at the time I was doing like Andy Frisella's 75 Hard, so I was walking every day. Yeah. And so I downloaded the audiobook, and you're very articulate, and you feel more of the passion when you listen to the audiobook. So anybody that's read your work, I highly recommend also getting the audio work, because it just made my brain go into the creative visual space very, very well. And so I'm excited to see your take on that as you kind of build that out, and the themes from Fire in the Dark. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, man, there's so much there. Everybody obviously likes The Way of Men, but Fire in the Dark I think is kind of my best. It's my most visionary book. Like there's so much more. Like I could just run with that, and maybe I will. Like maybe that's what I'm going to run with for the rest of my life, is building that out. And the way that they did King Warrior, Magician Lover, like now that's like a cult. Basically like everyone references that. I'm like, there's so much. I think mine's better.
So I read yours before I read that.
Okay.
And that might be why I agree with you. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
You got front loaded with my criticisms of it. So
right, exactly. So that's why. I could be misremembering. Maybe that's why I went and sought it out, was because you criticized it. I don't know, but but I for me specifically, just the way I work, the way I'm wired, Fire in the Dark it hit a chord with me, very similar to what you were saying with you and Nietzsche, where it was just like, this guy gets it. Like I'm right there with you, and it's really influenced me a lot, probably more heavily than I even realized.
Cool.
Reading that, because at the same time I was also listening to Ron Chernow's George Washington.
Oh dang!
Yeah. So like the correlatives between that, and then obviously I came across the George Washington entry under Lord of Earth while in the midst of reading Ron Chernow's George Washington. It was just mind-blowing. And I was just like, I didn't realize, or rather in that moment I did realize, like how impeccable men can be, like how how elevated we can take it. We've
Yeah.
been taught for so long to stare at our shoelaces that sometimes when you really look to the heavens, there's like this greatness that I think we've lost. And so it's really put me on a path, to your point, like once you have something and you're like, I didn't know what to write.
Yeah.
Now I have so much content that I want to speak to and help people through it. It's like it completely line itemed a lot of things and redline things that I didn't think I had before. So I'm very
Awesome, man.
grateful to you personally because your books have had such a profound impact on just my ability to cultivate thought and kind of create parameters around tribal, like connecting as a leader with my people, right? Like
Yeah.
like you said, way of men. I think this is the best way that your own words, like it's foundational because
Right.
it's intrinsic. It's like something that just you know it, you just didn't know how to say it. Like men know it.
Right.
And but Fire in the Dark takes it transcendentally. Like it literally transcends beyond the foundational and starts getting into this very cool ethereal space where I don't know, like it's I can't, I don't have the words. I don't have the articulation to give it the weight that I feel it. But it very much felt when I read Fire in the Dark, and then when I listened to it, very much where it was just like, this is my language. Like this is hitting the right chord with me.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad to hear that. Cause it's like, you don't really know how a book does really until a few years after it really comes out and how it affects people and whatever. But yeah, I think there's a lot there. And I think that's the right, I wouldn't write that I had the right answer if I didn't think I had the right answer. I mean, obviously there are a lot of right answers for everybody. And there are a lot of guys who follow me who will never really get into that side of what I've written about or whatever. But I really think that we're at this place in history, and obviously that's what that's about, where we can connect all the dots. And like these things are still cool, but they aren't just one thing. Like they aren't just like, well, Thor is just Thor, and that only means that. Like, well, Thor is also Indra, and all these things are like lined up together, and we can talk about that in this really big way, and connect with that whole thing rather than just a piece of it. And that's what we've been doing for our history. You just hit with it's a tribal thing. You just get a piece of it. But now it's like, we can go back and be like, let's connect the dots and talk about the big idea. And so that's why I think there's so much potential there. And I really have to do more with that book and build more on it. I think when I was done, I was so like almost cathartic about it. Like, like it's done. Like, I kind of, I had to let it go for a while, but which is not the best way to release a book. but I think there is more there. So I'm glad to hear you say that. And I'm definitely looking to like expand on that territory, because I think that's where yeah, I think it's going to be good.
You positioned it really well because even in the forward, I can't remember if it was the intro or the forward, but you even say, you like, listen, I know that there's a religious aspect to this. There's the philosophical side, which I can argue, like looking at it agnostically, completely amorally, just from a philosophical standpoint, that book holds so much weight and has so many answers. Like you said, you wouldn't say you had the answer if you didn't have the answer, right? And philosophically it does, but also I think there's a missing piece on the spirituality of connecting those points of like, why do we look to the supreme beings and the higher powers and things like that? And I think you really position it in such a way that I'd be hard pressed to find that anybody has any issue with that book other than their own personal proclivities and ego. But that's just my
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously everybody it becomes blasphemous at a certain point for certain people, like, when you talk about other things, because you deal with a lot of what I call Christian autism, like where they have to say, like, they have to repeat to you, like, but it's all the one God, but it's all the one God. There, it's Christ Jesus. It's Christ Jesus. And they just keep coming back to it. That's all they can do. And that's fine. That's their frame. That's whatever. But like, okay, well, I'm going to look at it from a 5,000 foot view here. And there is something, spiritual there. And I wanted people to be able to look at that book and say, hey, just, on an intellectual level, this makes sense. But
home with me for sure.
I think that there's a bigger level to it too. Like you could actually, like, because, okay, well, when you talk about gods, like, well, what's real? What's real and what's powerful? And I'm like, well, these things that have been in part of our psyche for 5,000, for thousands of years, like, if that's not real, what is? And so it becomes like, yeah, like I didn't want to push too much people hard in one direction or the other. But like I posted a passage actually. Oh yeah, it was to Instagram today about it was a quote from Nietzsche, like that was like it was about inspiration. I'm like, that is exactly what it's like. Because as you actually said earlier, like we don't know where thoughts come from. And yeah, when I'm writing the good shit, like I'm like, I don't know where that came from. Like I thought about it for a while, but the really good stuff is like it just comes out of you. And so like I definitely feel like I've channeled some stuff, and we can say where from or whatever. I don't know. But I definitely feel like some stuff has come through me, and that book, there's a lot I think that is supernatural without being weird about it. Like without, I don't have to be like, and then God spoke to me. Like I don't have to be, I don't have to take it to that level of thing, but you can kind of let that door open and be like, well, that came from somewhere. And maybe it's the back of my brain. Maybe my brain's just doing this really cool algorithm that no one else's does or whatever. But like, I'm open to that too.
But that fear creates an argument from ignorance too, right? Like for a lot of people, like to keep that door shut is kind of like saying all UFOs are aliens. Like, well, by definition, unidentified flying object is not alien. It just means we don't fucking know. So like, if you say you don't know, then you've got to say you don't know.
Right.
And I think that that's a fear point because people are controlled beings by nature. We want to be able to be in control and have this devout knowledge of like, this is the way the world works. This is how we perceive it. And that's the way it is. And when you open that door and say it came from some other place that's not mine, right? Like you start to wonder if like you're hearing voices or like it was the voice of God.
Oh yeah, that's the unknown at that point. That's what I mean. What you're talking about is like what Nietzsche called the last man. Like we've had everything figured out. Everything is exactly as it's been prescribed. And that was like the whole past like 2 years of like the people who were like trust the science. Like everything has been decided. It's fine.
Yeah. That's exactly how I correlated when I was talking with people. Was Nietzsche's last man concept was like, oh, okay, here we are.
yeah, this is what we're doing now. And that's what that is. And then but if you're on the other side of that, then there is mystery, and there is the I don't know, and that is chaotic, and men want to put things in order. They want things to be in order, but we don't actually know everything. And so to be really honest, I think you have to be and say, well, there's some things I don't really understand, and everything hasn't been figured out yet, and it never will be, probably. So well, yeah, because that'd be boring. That's like
hopefully the curiosity can persist, because like you said,
what would you do? You have to actually destroy it. I mean, this is I feel like this is what Nietzsche would write. like if everything was figured out, we would have to destroy it and discover it again. Yeah. Like that's what you would have to do.
Ironically, who's to say that isn't what's happened in the past?
Who knows?
Right? We have massively technologically advanced societies disappearing overnight.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, and we don't know. Maybe that is what happened. They lost their curiosity, so they destroyed it all with a hammer.
Yeah. Oh shit! Graham Hancock is around here somewhere. I don't know. Like.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much. Before I let you go, if anybody needs to follow him, Start the World on Instagram. New to Twitter, get him up to 100,000 followers so he can compete with his buddies who's been there for 10 years and
for real
faces. But seriously, thank you so much. Again, I've been a huge fan of your work for a long time. Not to be a fangirl about it, but it's definitely been something that's always kind of.
You can only ever be a fanboy. This isn't a trans conversation.
I did that just so that we could be provocateurs.
Yeah.
See, now I get to just push buttons. I'm a podcast. Yeah, I'm a real podcaster now. I get to push buttons.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, like seriously, like it's been something of a journey on my own kind of space within the last 2 years, going from this kind of arrogant idea with Heroes Veritas of reclaiming masculinity to realizing that I really just wanted the root cause of why men are such chicken shits. That was really what started me down that path, and just kind of exploring that. Your teachings have been very intrinsic to that process, and I really do appreciate you taking time. And I love this conversation. For me, it was very enjoyable. So I hope it even matched even a partials for you. So thank you so much for that.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
And as far as everybody listening, because this was more about me than it was about you, please feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And we'll check you next time on Heroes Veritas Podcast.
speak.